Thank you, Lasca Hirlock. Welcome, Minister, and congratulations on the budget and your securing of investment in special education, additional to last year. And thank you for your support to date in Dublin West. You came out to visit Rathdara, as it is now known, in Dublin 15. You understand around the issue around the building with Danu. And also thanks to the government for the opening of Danu Community Special School back in November 2019 with the patron DDL-ETB in the temporary site that is Hansfield. And I'm sure we will talk about the building at some stage as well, but today is more about the resources. I would prefer if we were talking about the future for the children, but actually today I'm talking to you about the future of the school, because the school does feel as if they are in crisis after incident, crisis after crisis in terms of managing, and they're not focusing enough on education and learning. And when I say the school, I'm talking about the parents, and I'm talking about the brilliant work of the Autism School, the Dublin 15 committee that were behind the opening of the school and campaigning for it. These are children with very complex and challenging behavioural needs, non-verbal, they communicate through their behaviour, they have severe learning disabilities, some of them sensory impairments, they can have ADHD and anxiety. We're dealing with complex cases here, children that weren't in school, and the most vulnerable of all children, and the families that are under the most pressure, and they need the right resources in their school. They need the wraparound supports, the behavioural therapists, the psychologists, OTs, SLT, physiotherapists, and the reality is at the moment that they do not feel that they're getting them, and I'm not sure that you're aware of just how serious the situation is. They have 30 children. That'll go to 34 in January and will go up to their allocation of 36 in September 2022. They have a principal, 6 teachers and 15 SNAs, but they feel that they needed more based on the assessments for the children. At the moment, they're getting 2 hours behavioural support with a behavioural therapist a week and 3 hours remotely, and that's their second therapist, and that's important to mention just in terms of the knowledge and the consistency. And they feel that they can't focus on education at the moment because they are purely focused on managing behaviours, and they need the expertise of a behavioural therapist, so they're looking for a full-time behavioural therapist to work with proactive strategies and not constantly dealing with the behavioural challenges. And the question that I'm asked is, what is the policy? What is the definition of the special school, the new model? Because they want clarity. What differentiates them from, say, a special class in a school, and getting those wraparound supports? Because their needs need to be based on the children, the needs of the children, not the size of the school. And they are constantly battling that with SCRC allocations from 1993, where they get 1 teacher and 2 SNAs per 6 students. And that to them is just not enough, dealing with the complexity of the cases. Where does the progressing disability fit around this? Because we're not talking about just about education here. We are talking about life skills for the future. This is a school that feels that they're surviving, they're coping, they're not thriving, they're not managing, and they're in a building that's not fit for purpose. They've dealt with it with the pandemic. They have a constant staff turnover, and I know them personally. The incentives aren't there for. I mean, why would the SNAs and the teachers take on these complex cases when they don't feel that they're getting the right supports in this instance? They're overwhelmed, and you know, hopefully we'll talk about the building in the next section. But I think this is a cry for help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Currie. Minister, to reply, please.
Thank you, Senator Currie, and thank you for your acknowledgement in relation to the resources in the budget. Obviously, as Minister for Special Education, it was really important that we put extra resources into children with additional needs, and we know that there's a whole spectrum there from, you know, children perhaps in mainstream. There's about 90% of children with additional needs in mainstream. Then if they have a more severe or complex need, they will go into a special class, and if it's more severe again, they will go into a special school. And at the moment, you'll be aware that we have 126 special schools in the country, looking after about 8,000 pupils. We have increased in the budget the SNAs actually by 70% since 2011. We're now at 1,165. We have 980 new special education teachers, which will actually help create about 140 new special school places. So we are putting significant funding, because you mentioned at the outset in relation to resources, significant funding overall into special schools, into special classes, and indeed into mainstream. And it's really important that we provide a flexible and tailored support for each child, so that each child gets the appropriate education that they deserve from their teachers. And obviously we look always to see if we can do better than what we're already doing. So it's important that you've highlighted this issue, I think, to me today. My understanding is that the NCSE are engaging quite extensively with the school, and indeed NEPS as well, in terms of trying to provide a bespoke, tailored support to the school. I do understand that they have access already to a behavioural practitioner, is what they call it, which is de facto the same as a behavioural therapist. So there is availability there. And I think one of the issues that is coming back to me is around staff capacity. You did mention that yourself, around making sure that staff have adequate training, that they have adequate advice, and I know that the NCSE is working with NEPS to make sure that the teachers have appropriate training and appropriate insight for this particular area. I think the behavioural issue is something that often goes unnoticed. We often think about just education, you know, teaching ABC or 1, 2, 3, but it doesn't work like that. The behavioural issues can be very problematic, particularly in special schools when there's acute need for it. I have to say, though, that special schools in general, and you asked me in relation to the distinction between a special class and a special school, there is a huge difference in terms of the supports that special schools receive. There's much more enhanced supports from a staffing level, from an SNA level. In fact, from all of the supports they receive is above and beyond what you would in a special class. But I think the most important aspect to this, from my perspective, is the fact that there is ongoing support with NEPS and ongoing collaboration and engagement. And I know that they're in constant contact with the school in relation to sorting this out. They will be visiting the school on site next week, I understand, where there will be further engagement and further discussion. This is a relatively new school. As you said, I did go out to visit, and I'm quite aware of the building and the issue around that as well. So it is important that they're supported. And I note what you're saying, that you're increasing the amount of children from 30 children to, I think you said, 36. That may well increase into the future. And obviously, there are mechanisms and processes there put in place so that we can ensure that there are adequate supports given on an ongoing basis. And even when we're talking about special needs in general, and we look at the increase that we've made in special classes, we've increased that by 386% since 2011. So we went from 584 special classes to now 2,118, which is significant. But for your particular... All right, thank you.
Oh, no. Do you want to just...
No, that's fine.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. You will be back again in a moment. Senator Currie, please.
Thank you, Minister. And that's great to know that they are going out to visit the school last week. I've been raising this issue, I think, for about a year now, and I'm not getting around the full-time behavioural therapist. And I know that the school community doesn't feel like they're being heard on this. I do think that they need a full-time behavioural therapist, and I know what you're saying about that they get access to more resources. I think when I speak to them, they want to know the definition, so that I suppose that they have something that they can measure what they have against in terms of what the new model is, because to me it is about a centre of excellence. And the school, they're moving to, in January 2022, they'll be moving to Rathdara, but we know that they need a purpose-built school. They can't just have classrooms attached to another school. You know, these are children that deserve the full wraparound services and joined up thinking and a purpose-built specific school with a full-time behavioural therapist.
Thank you very much. I don't mind interrupting you, because I think there's very little ambiguity in that presentation. Minister.
And do stop me, Chair, if I go over. I should clarify that in general, speech and language therapists and occupational therapists and behavioural therapists come from the HSE. You know, but the NCSE can sanction it. But I think I think the most important aspect to this, to me, is that there is engagement and that there is discussion. The fact that the NCSE are going out next week and will offer a bespoke solution for the school. It's important that you highlighted it today. I think that's important. The NCSE are aware that I'm here, that you've brought this matter up, and we'll look at it in the round, because it is also about staff training as well, and I think that's very important that exists. So there is access there to behavioural practitioner if the NCSE is of the view that they need to increase those hours. They do have a behavioural practitioner, but it's not in the particular school, and this is the way it works. They can discuss that with them and see if there's more that they can provide. But I'm very grateful for you bringing it up here in the Seanad, and it's also important that Danu will have adequate accommodation as well. It's good that they're moving in January. Who knows what the future will hold? We obviously went out there as well with you in the Taoiseach, and hopefully there'll be a resolution to that in the near future as well.
Thank you very much indeed.